The teacups were still warm. The almond cookies I had baked the night before sat untouched on the porcelain plate. It was 7 p.m., the exact time Thomas usually walked through the door, but this time he wouldn't. I stared at the front door for longer than I cared to admit, almost expecting to hear the sound of his key turning in the lock. But there was only silence, the kind of silence that settles into the bones when something is gone for good. My name is Vivian Carter, and for 15 years I believed I had the kind of marriage people envied. Thomas was calm, accomplished, the kind of man who always made a room feel more grounded the second he entered. He never raised his voice. He was never late. He brought me flowers on Sundays, wore crisp button-downs, and never let me worry about the mortgage. We didn't have children. Life just flowed, as if we were two puzzle pieces that simply clicked. But what I didn't know, what I was about to find out, was that puzzle had missing pieces. And one of them was hidden in a place I had never been allowed to go. Thomas died on a Thursday. They said it was a heart attack. I remember the doctor's face as he said it, kind, rehearsed, detached. Massive myocardial infarction, he said. He went quickly. I nodded like I understood, like it made any difference. But it didn't. Not when you've just lost the only person you thought truly knew you. The funeral was a blur of black clothing, polite condolences, and unfamiliar faces telling me how wonderful my husband had been. I clung to Claire, my best friend since college, who kept handing me water I didn't drink and food I couldn't swallow. It wasn't until my sister Rachel arrived, her perfume too sweet, her hug too long, that something shifted in me. "I'm so sorry, sis," she whispered, her voice just a bit too smooth. Thomas was like a brother to me. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something in the way she looked at me, it wasn't grief. Later that evening, as she poured herself a drink in my kitchen, she said, "Hey, I know it's not the time, but Thomas loaned me money. I was hoping to get that settled, now that you're taken care of." I stared at her. "What money?" I asked. She blinked, then smiled like I was being silly. "Oh, I guess he never told you." Something inside me twisted. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept walking through our house, touching the furniture like it could tell me something. The bookshelves, the polished floors, the framed wedding photo that suddenly felt like it belonged to strangers. That's when I saw them, Thomas's keys, still sitting on the hallway table. I picked them up and there it was. The key I was never allowed to use. The one shaped differently than the others. The key to his garage. I had asked about it once. Years ago. "There's nothing interesting in there," he said, smiling. "Just tools. Grease. You wouldn't like it." I didn't press. I never pressed. That was our marriage. Easy, comfortable, and full of quiet spaces I wasn't supposed to enter. But now I had nothing to lose. The next morning, I drove out to the garage. It was in the old industrial district, behind a row of crumbling buildings with rusted roofs and weeds curling through cracked asphalt. Not exactly the kind of place you'd expect a man like Thomas to keep anything. But he came here once a week, every Thursday. Like clockwork. I never questioned it. The metal door was heavier than I expected. The key turned with a reluctant groan, and for a moment I stood there, afraid of what I might find on the other side. It smelled like dust and oil. I reached for the light switch, and then I froze. It wasn't a garage. It wasn't tools or boxes or car parts. It was a shrine to a life I never knew existed. I took a slow step inside. The fluorescent lights flickered to life overhead, casting a pale glow over the strangest room I had ever seen. The walls were covered, completely covered, in photographs, news clippings, hand-drawn charts, and travel maps. On one wall, dozens of printed photos were pinned in neat rows like some sort of obsessive collage. And every single one of them had Thomas in it, but not the Thomas the first knew. In these pictures, he wasn't wearing his usual tailored suits or polished demeanor. He looked different, relaxed. Worn jeans, casual shirts, messy hair. His face was softer, his posture less guarded. And in almost every photo, he was standing beside a woman. The same woman, She was beautiful, younger than me by at least 10 years, with dark hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. They were close, too close, her hand on his arm, his face turned toward her with a smile I hadn't seen in years. In one photo, they were at the beach, another in a ski lodge, then one at a candlelit dinner. There were timestamps handwritten on the back of some of them, 7 years ago, 5, 3, one from just a few months ago. August 2024. That one stopped me cold, because on that day I was at home cooking his favorite meal, waiting for him to return from a client meeting. And now I was looking at a photograph of him sitting beside this woman and a man in his early 30s. The three of them were smiling, like a family. There was a name scribbled faintly on the back in Thomas's handwriting. Isabel and Logan. August 2024. My knees buckled. I reached for the metal desk in the center of the room to steady myself. That's when I saw the papers. Files stacked high. Bank transfers, corporate records, letters from overseas firms, tax documents that didn't match anything I knew about his business. And in one folder, a medical report. My eyes scanned the header. Crescent Heart Institute. It was dated less than 2 months ago. I found Thomas's full name printed at the top, followed by a diagnosis I could barely pronounce: ischemic heart disease. Stage 3, risk of cardiac arrest, high. He knew. He knew he was dying. He knew, and instead of talking to me, instead of preparing me, instead of even hinting at the truth, he spent his last days building some secret world with another woman, another life, another child? Because that's what the young man in the photo had to be. Their son. My stomach turned. 15 years. 15 years I stood by him. And now, the man I buried wasn't my husband. Not really. He was a stranger. A stranger who had looked me in the eye the night before he died, handed me a velvet box with a sapphire necklace inside, kissed my cheek, and told me, "You're the only one for me." I staggered back toward the door. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight, my mind spinning. What was I supposed to do with this? Who even was I now? A widow, yes. But of whom? That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Soft. Hesitant. Like someone didn't want to be heard. I turned around fast, heart slamming against my ribs. And standing in the open doorway was the young man from the photo. Same dark hair. Same sharp jawline. Same intense, unreadable eyes. His voice was calm when he spoke, but my pulse pounded in my ears too loudly to really absorb the words at first. "Vivian Carter," he asked. I didn't answer. "I thought you might come here." "I'm Logan Myers," he said, stepping inside slowly. "Thomas Carter was my father." And just like that, the floor disappeared beneath me. I don't remember what I said first. Maybe nothing. Maybe I just stood there, gripping the edge of the desk like it was the only solid thing left in the world. Logan stepped forward, calm but cautious, like he knew this was fragile territory. I stared at him, not just seeing him, but searching. There was no doubt. His eyes, they were Thomas's. Same intense gaze. Same silence that said more than words ever could. You're really his son." I finally managed to whisper. "Yes," Logan replied without hesitation. "And I'm sorry. I never wanted you to find out like this." "How long did you know about me?" I asked, my voice barely above a breath. "My whole life," he said with no trace of apology. "He didn't tell me much, only that he was married, that you didn't know about me. He kept us very separate. My mother, Isabel, respected that. She never wanted to interfere. But after she passed away last year, things changed." Passed away. So now she was gone, too. Just like Thomas. I sat down in the dusty chair near the desk. My legs couldn't hold me up anymore. "Why are you here?" I asked. "Why today?" Logan reached into his backpack and pulled out a folded document yellowed at the edges. He held it out, and I hesitated before taking it. "It's a draft of a will," he said. "Unfinished. Unofficial. My father gave it to me 2 weeks before he died. He said the official one would go to you, but this was just in case. I unfolded the paper, and there it was, Thomas's handwriting, steady and familiar, looping across the page like it always had on birthday cards and dinner notes. It wasn't notarized, just scribbled lines dividing assets. Mention of Logan. A reference to a company I'd never heard of, Mercury South Holdings. And one more thing, access to remaining documents secured in office vault. Code linked to personal item gifted to V. I froze. Personal item. Gifted to me. The necklace. The sapphire necklace he gave me just 2 nights before he died. That wasn't just a gift. It was a key. I touched my collarbone instinctively, though the necklace wasn't there. I had left it at home, tucked in its box because it felt too heavy to wear. Now it felt even heavier. What is Mercury South Holdings? I asked, still scanning the document. Logan took a breath. One of his private firms. Not public. Not on paper. He used it to move money. Internationally. After my mom died, I started digging. There were transfers I couldn't trace, offshore accounts in my name I never opened. I think he was trying to secure something. For you. For me. For all of us. My mouth went dry. Why? Because he knew time was running out, Logan said quietly. And because he didn't trust the people he worked with. I looked up. What people? Logan's face darkened. He never said names, only that if something happened to him, someone would come looking. For information, for leverage, for what he left behind. I leaned back in the chair, my thoughts racing. A second safe, a company I'd never heard of, a necklace that might hold a code, and a man I had loved for 15 years, who'd built an entire world outside of me. You're saying there's more, I said. That the will, the files, the photos, all of it was just the beginning. Logan nodded. I think he left things behind. Not just for us, but to protect us. I stood slowly, my legs still unsteady, and looked around the room one last time. It no longer felt like a shrine. It felt like evidence and a warning. I need to go home, I said, voice hoarse. I need that necklace. Can I come with you? Logan asked. If you'll let me. I paused, then nodded, because whether I wanted to or not, this was now our story. I didn't go home right away. I couldn't. I needed space to think, to breathe. So I called Claire. Within 20 minutes, I was on her couch, hands wrapped around a mug of tea I wasn't drinking, the sapphire necklace sitting on the table between us like a live grenade. Claire didn't ask questions. She never did, not until I was ready. And when I finally told her everything about the garage, the photos, Logan, the will, she didn't say, I told you so. She just whispered, I'm so sorry, and reached for my hand. But I wasn't ready to cry. I wasn't ready to collapse. I needed answers. I needed someone to blame. So I drove to Rachel's condo. It was a newer building on the north end of town. One of those luxury developments with underground parking, coded gates, and concierge service. Strange, for someone who had always complained about money. As the elevator climbed, I could feel my anger rising with it. She opened the door barefoot, wearing silk pajamas and a glass of wine in one hand. Her makeup was perfect. Her hair styled like she was expecting company. Well, if it isn't my grieving sister, she said with a smug smile. Come to inspect the widow's inheritance. Cut the crap, Rachel, I snapped. We need to talk. I pushed past her into the living room, where a framed photograph caught my eye. It was her and Thomas, laughing, toasting champagne. The date, stamped in the corner, made my stomach flip. 5 years ago. What the hell is this? I demanded, pointing at the frame. Rachel sauntered over, taking a long sip of her wine. Oh, that? A company holiday party. You were too tired to come, remember? Thomas insisted I join him. She said it like it was nothing, like sharing champagne with my husband while I stayed home folding laundry was completely normal. We always got along so well, she added casually. I turned to face her fully. How well, exactly? Her smirk faltered. I know about Isabel, I said. I know about Logan, about the garage, the fake company, the will. I know everything. So if there's more, tell me now. Rachel's eyes narrowed. She walked over to her liquor cart, refilled her glass, and said softly, "Fine. You want the truth." She set the glass down and placed a hand on her stomach. "I'm pregnant," she said, "and it's Thomas's." I didn't move. I didn't speak. My brain just shut down. 10 weeks, she continued. I found out a week before he died. He knew. He said he'd take care of everything. He even told me he would leave Isabel soon. I froze. You were still seeing him after Isabel died. Rachel gave a small shrug. She was never supposed to be permanent. I was always the one who stayed. I felt like I was floating outside my body. The walls, the furniture, the sound of the refrigerator humming, all of it faded into background noise. "You slept with my husband," I whispered. Rachel shrugged. "Don't act so surprised. You had your perfect little life, your perfect house, your perfect dinners at 7 o'clock. Meanwhile, I was struggling to pay rent, working dead-end jobs, listening to Mom compare us like I was some failed version of you. Then Thomas started showing up, offering help, listening." She looked up at me, eyes suddenly sharp. "You were his routine. I was his escape." The slap came before I realized I'd raised my hand. Rachel's head snapped to the side. Her wine glass shattered on the floor. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just smiled. "Now, there's the real Vivian," she said. "Not the prim, perfect wife. The woman who just found out she's been living a lie." I turned away, breathing hard, hands trembling. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, quieter now. "Because you never would have believed me," she said. "You always thought I was jealous. And maybe I was. But this wasn't about you. This was about me finally getting something for myself." I shook my head. "You didn't just take something. You stole everything." She walked closer, her expression suddenly unreadable. "Say what you want, but that baby growing inside me, he or she is your family, whether you like it or not." My throat tightened. I wanted to scream, to break things, to rewind time. But instead I said, "I'll honor what Thomas left in his will. Not for you, for the baby, because they didn't ask for this mess." Rachel blinked. Her voice softened for the first time. "You mean that?" "I don't know what I mean," I whispered. "But I know this. I need to leave." I walked toward the door, ignoring the glass crunching under my shoes. My fingers trembled as I grabbed the handle. "Behind me," she called out. "You think I'm the worst thing Thomas did." I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure anymore. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't bear to step into that house with its carefully arranged dinnerware and untouched bed. Instead, I returned to Claire's, clutching the sapphire necklace in my fist like it might burn a hole through my skin. She didn't ask where I'd been. She just opened the door, looked at my face, and said, "You need sleep." But I couldn't sleep, not when every room in my mind was crashing inward. The next morning, Logan picked me up in his car. "Claire came too," she insisted. "You're not going into your husband's secret vault without backup," she said, tossing her coat over her shoulder. Thomas's office was in a high-rise downtown. He'd always called it just a satellite space. When I asked somewhere to take private meetings, he'd said. I never once set foot inside. But Logan had a key card. "I'm listed as a co-owner," he said, scanning us through security. The receptionist barely glanced up. Thomas had built a life so compartmentalized, it never needed explaining. The elevator ride felt like years. At the 14th floor, Logan led us to a glass-walled office with cold, modern furniture and no trace of warmth. Not a single photo of me. No framed memories. Just sleek surfaces, gray walls, and a subtle scent of cologne I hadn't smelled before. "There!" Logan pointed to a large, abstract painting mounted behind the desk. "The safe's behind that." I reached into my bag and pulled out the necklace. My fingers found the small clasp. I twisted it counterclockwise. Click! A hidden compartment popped open on the back of the sapphire pendant. Inside, a thin metal plate no larger than a SIM card. Numbers were engraved along the edge. Logan took it carefully and slid it into the keypad on the safe. A low beep, then a soft whir. The door opened. Inside were stacks of documents, a sleek black flash drive, a small wooden box, and a single silver key attached to a tag that read, Bank Safe Deposit Federal Trust. Logan pulled out the documents. Contracts, transfers, financial statements. Some of these names, they're international banks. He wasn't just hiding money, he was moving it. Offshore. Fast. I picked up the flash drive, but didn't plug it in. Not yet. Then I opened the small wooden box. It was a ring, a simple gold band with a small diamond. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't mine. Inside the band, an inscription, and always. Not V. Not me. N for Isabel. Jesus, Claire whispered beside me. Logan looked away, jaw tight. He bought her a ring, I said, my voice barely audible. He was going to propose. Or maybe he already had. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't cry, because there in the cold silence of my dead husband's office, I realized the truth I hadn't dared name. He loved her. He might have loved me too in his own way. But her? She got the part of him that was real, the part that smiled in photographs, that vacationed, that laughed. And the rest? The rest was a performance. A polished husband with dinner at 7 o'clock, roses on Sundays, and a safe full of secrets. Then Logan handed me a letter, folded neatly, my name on the front. I unfolded it with shaking hands. Vivian, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry. I never had the courage to tell you the truth, to say out loud what I should have said years ago. I was selfish. I built 2 lives because I couldn't give up either. And in the end, it cost me everything. I loved you. I know that sounds empty now. Maybe it always was. But I did, in the only way I knew how. I wanted you to have peace, to be safe. That's why I left you the papers, the access, the truth. Use them how you see fit. Burn them, bury them, or expose it all. It's your choice now. Forgive me if you can. If not, I understand. Thomas. I stared at the page until the words blurred. Then I passed it to Claire. She read it silently, then handed it to Logan. He didn't say anything. None of us did. Because what was there to say? The man we'd all thought we knew had shattered like glass. And all we could do now was decide what to do with the shards. We left the office in silence. The kind of silence that doesn't come from peace, but from the absence of anything left to say. Claire drove. Logan sat beside me, and I stared out the window watching Charleston blur into a palette of autumn gray. My dead husband had lived a life I never touched. Now we were holding the pieces of it in our hands, and we didn't know who else was watching. That night, as I tried to sleep on Claire's pull-out couch, my phone rang. Unknown number. Vivian Carter, a man's voice said. Yes, I answered, already on edge. This is Gordon Blake. I was a business associate of your husband's. My stomach dropped. I believe you have something that belongs to me. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, he said, calm as still water. The documents from the safe. Some of them concern international transfers, accounts I helped set up. I suggest we meet. I'm not meeting anyone. You will, he said, because the other people Thomas worked with, they're not as polite as I am. They don't ask. He hung up. I stared at the ceiling for a long time, heart racing. In the morning, I told Logan. His jaw clenched as he paced the room. He contacted me too, he said. But there's more. Last night, someone else called. He handed me a slip of paper. Victor Crane. He claims he's the original source of the funds Thomas moved. He said if we don't return everything by the end of the week, there will be consequences. I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't need to. Logan pulled out the silver key from the safe. We still have the deposit box, he said. Whatever's inside might help explain who really owns what. But do we really want to open another box? I asked, trying to keep my voice from cracking. What if all it does is make things worse? Claire sat beside me. Then at least you'll know. The not knowing, it's what's killing you. She was right. So we made a plan. First, the bank. Then, if things still didn't make sense, we'd find someone who could tell us the truth. Thomas had to have had a fallback. A contact. Someone who knew what the hell he was involved in. That's when Logan said, "There's a name my mother mentioned once. Edward Holloway. Dad's old college friend." She said he was the only one who ever told Thomas the truth, even when he didn't want to hear it. "Do you know where he is?" "I think so," Logan said. "Mom had his address in Savannah. She kept it in a box of emergency contacts." So we drove, a 2-hour trip in silence, rain trailing down the windshield like streaks of memory. Savannah greeted us with oak trees and damp air and the kind of stillness that only old towns seem to carry. Edward lived in a tall brick house covered in ivy, like something pulled from a forgotten novel. He opened the door slowly. "You're Vivian," he said without hesitation. "And you must be Logan. You knew we'd come?" I asked. He nodded. Thomas said, "If it all comes apart, they'll find you." He stepped back. "Come in." Inside, his house smelled like paper and pipe smoke. Bookshelves lined the walls. A piano sat in the corner, untouched but polished. He motioned for us to sit, then disappeared into another room and returned with a sealed envelope. "He left this with me," Edward said. "Said it was only to be opened if both of you showed up together." I looked at Logan. He nodded. I opened the envelope. Inside was a short handwritten letter and a second will. This one was different. It named the child Rachel was carrying. It assigned 25% of Thomas's private savings, offshore unspecified, to the child once they turned 21. I felt the blood drain from my face. He planned for everything, even this. And with that, I realized we were standing at the center of a storm Thomas had built brick by brick. And now it was on us to survive it. I stared at the will again, at the name, unborn child of Rachel Carter, 25%, to be held in trust until age 21. It wasn't the money that stunned me. It was the precision. Thomas had planned this, all of it. Even after death, he was still 3 steps ahead. Why would he name the baby but not Rachel? I asked Edward. "Because he trusted the child," Edward said gently, "not the mother." Logan shifted in his seat. "This changes everything. It means Rachel can't touch that money, not legally." I looked down at the second will again. "And if she tries?" Edward nodded toward the flash drive. "Then you use that. From what Thomas told me, it contains detailed records of every transfer, every partner, every crime they committed to build this thing. If they push you, you push back." Claire exhaled beside me. "You have leverage." For the first time since Thomas died, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the woman who'd been lied to, cheated on, and left with broken pieces. I felt like the only one left holding the blueprint, and that was power. Logan leaned forward. "Vivian, I think it's time we stop reacting. We need to make a move, before Gordon or Crane does." I nodded slowly. "We go to the bank." We drove back into Charleston before noon. The Federal Trust building sat nestled between a law office and a historic inn, discreet and unassuming. The kind of place you'd walk by 100 times without noticing, until it mattered. Claire stayed in the car. "Just text if it gets weird," she said. "And if they don't let you in, cry. Nobody says no to a woman crying at a bank." Logan smiled at that. I didn't. Inside, the vault manager looked at the silver key, checked my ID, and raised an eyebrow. "It's been years since anyone accessed this box," he said. "It was registered under a corporate shield, Mercury South Holdings. He led us into the basement, past layers of security doors and concrete. The air grew colder, the silence thicker, and then we were alone with the safe deposit box. He handed me gloves. "Standard procedure," he said. "We'll give you privacy." The door closed behind us. My fingers hovered over the lock. "Ready?" Logan asked. "No," but I did it anyway. The key turned smoothly. The box slid out. Inside wasn't cash. No passports. No burner phones. No stacks of untraceable bills. Just one manila folder and a photograph. The photo was of Thomas, Logan, and Gordon Blake, standing in front of a black SUV, arms crossed, laughing. And behind them, Victor Crane. I stared at the photo for a long time. They weren't just business associates, I said. They were a team. Logan opened the folder. Dozens of signed agreements. Shell company registrations. Payoffs. And one document marked Crane Blackmail Insurance in bold red ink. It wasn't just leverage. It was a loaded gun. "Thomas kept proof," I whispered, "of everything." And in that moment, I understood. He hadn't just left me a mess. He'd left me a weapon. Now it was my choice who to aim it at. We didn't go home. We went to the lawyer. His name was Marcus Doyle, and he'd represented my father's estate years ago. Straightforward, discreet, and allergic to drama. I told him everything. Almost. Not about the affair. Not about Rachel. Just the parts that mattered legally. The documents, the threats, the offshore accounts. He didn't blink. "Do you want to press charges?" he asked. "No," I said. I want insurance." He nodded. "Then we'll copy everything. Digitally. Physically. Store backups in 3 locations. One here. One with you. And one with someone not connected to you." "I know just the person," Claire said, smiling grimly. We spent hours scanning files. Thomas had kept meticulous records. Names, dates, wire logs, fake invoices. It wasn't just shady business. It was criminal enterprise. International. And with Thomas gone, they thought the evidence had vanished. They were wrong. By the end of the day, Marcus had drafted a simple letter. I added one line at the bottom in my own handwriting. "Try me. VC." We sent it to Gordon Blake's office via courier. He called within 15 minutes. "You think you're clever," he hissed into the phone. "You're in over your head." "No," I replied calmly. "You are. Because the next call I make is to the IRS. And after that, Interpol." There was a pause, then laughter. "All right," he said. "What do you want?" "Nothing," I said. "I just want you to stop. No calls. No threats. No late-night warnings. You touch me or anyone I know, and the folder goes public. Every file. Every signature. You don't want that kind of trouble." "I already have that kind of trouble," I said. "The difference is I'm not afraid of it anymore." He hung up. 2 hours later, Victor Crane called. His tone was different. Smooth. Polished. Like a man used to charming his way through locked doors. "Vivian," he said, like we were old friends. "I've heard about your discoveries. I think we're starting off on the wrong foot." "There is no foot," I said. "Just your signature on a dozen illegal transfers." He laughed softly. "All hypothetical, of course." I let the silence stretch. Then I said, "I know you think you can handle this, but here's the thing, Mr. Crane. I have no reputation to lose, no company to protect. I have nothing left of the life I knew, and that makes me very, very dangerous." That shut him up. I ended the call. Logan and I sat on Claire's porch that night, the flash drive in his pocket, a copy of the folder buried in the planter box behind us. Paranoid? Maybe. But when you've been lied to by the person you trusted most, paranoia starts to feel like survival. "I didn't know he was capable of all this," Logan said quietly. "My mom, she always said he was complicated, but I thought she meant sad, not corrupt." "He was both," I said, "and maybe more." I stared up at the stars, cold and steady above us. "We're not done yet," I said. "There's one more thing we haven't opened." Logan frowned. "What?" "The flash drive." The flash drive was small, black, unmarked, like it had nothing to say unless you asked the right way. We didn't open it that night, or the next morning. It took me 2 days. 2 days of preparing myself for whatever truth was still waiting. 2 days of rehearsing my reactions, as if practicing would make betrayal feel any less sharp. Logan sat beside me on the couch. Claire brought tea again. No one said a word as I plugged it in. A single folder appeared. For Vivian inside, one video file, dated just 10 days before Thomas's death. My fingers hovered, then clicked. The screen went black, then flickered to life. Thomas, not the one I'd seen in wedding photos or seated across from me at dinner. This Thomas looked hollow, eyes tired, shirt wrinkled, like he hadn't slept in weeks. He leaned forward. "Vivian," he said, "if you're watching this, it means I didn't make it. Or maybe I ran out of time." He sighed and rubbed his face. "There's no easy way to say this, so I'll just say it. You were never the one I needed to hide things from. You were the one I wanted to protect. But I waited too long, and now everything's closing in." He paused. "There's someone you need to be careful with. Someone you trust more than you should." My heart slowed. He looked straight into the camera. "It's Rachel." The room went still. She wasn't just someone I slipped up with. It wasn't that simple. She planned this from the beginning. The pregnancy wasn't an accident. The night I told her I couldn't keep doing this, she changed. Said if I left her, she'd go public. With the money, with the shell accounts, with everything I'd buried to keep you safe. He leaned closer. "I think she killed Isabel." My mouth went dry. "I can't prove it," Thomas said, but the timing was too perfect. Isabel had just packed her bags, told me she booked a one-way flight to Lisbon. Then the car crash. Single vehicle. No witnesses. The brakes failed, they said, but she had the car serviced the day before. He looked into the camera, his voice trembling. Rachel knew she was pregnant. Isabel didn't. That's what changed everything. An accident, they said. No foul play. But Rachel knew she was pregnant, and Isabel didn't. Claire covered her mouth. Logan's fists clenched. "I tried to make it right," Thomas said. "I moved the money, created backups, made sure that if something happened to me, you would have the power. I'm sorry it took this much damage for me to finally do the right thing." He looked away, then back again. "I was weak, but you're not. And if you want to walk away from all of this, do it. Take what's yours and leave them in the dust. But if you decide to fight back, don't do it alone." The screen froze, then cut to black. I sat there, unmoving, for what felt like hours. He knew. He knew what Rachel was capable of. He knew what was coming. And still, he tried to control the narrative even in death. Maybe out of guilt, maybe out of fear. But now he'd handed me the truth. And it was time to decide what to do with it. Rachel didn't know I'd seen the video. Not when I invited her to brunch. Not when I hugged her at the door, said how much I missed her, how we should talk like real sisters again. She smiled like a woman who thought she'd won. She wore a pale blue dress that hugged her belly just right. "He kicks when I drink orange juice," she said with a laugh, rubbing her hand over the bump. I smiled too, but my eyes didn't. We sat on the porch of Claire's house. Logan stayed inside. Claire poured sweet tea and left us alone. "I'm glad you reached out," Rachel said, folding her hands neatly on her lap. "I was worried you were angry." "Why would I be angry?" I asked softly. "Because my husband was sleeping with my sister? Or because he left you part of the inheritance?" Rachel blinked. That was the first crack. She shifted in her seat. "Vivian, this is hard for both of us." Thomas was confused, torn. "But he loved you." "No," I interrupted. "He didn't love me. He pitied me." Rachel flinched. I leaned forward. And he feared you. Her face stilled. I placed the flash drive between us. Rachel's lips parted, just slightly. I know about the accounts, the manipulation. I know he was planning to leave you. And I know about Isabel. She didn't blink, didn't move, just said, "You can't prove anything." "You're right," I replied. "But I don't have to." She frowned. I stood up. "Because I'm not going to court. I'm not going to press charges. I'm not going to fight for some half-baked justice system to fix this." I looked her straight in the eye. "I'm going to walk away and leave you here with everything you thought you wanted. The money, the child, the lies." Rachel stood up too. "You think that scares me?" "No," I said, "but it will." Then I turned and walked inside where Logan was waiting. Later that afternoon, I met with Marcus Doyle again, handed him the flash drive, a signed affidavit, and one instruction. "If anything happens to me, it goes to the press. All of it." Then I went home, to the house I once shared with Thomas. It was quiet now. Still, I walked through each room, touching the backs of chairs, the door frames, the cracks in the floorboard we never got around to fixing. I opened the closet, packed one suitcase, left the rest. When I reached the garage, I locked the door behind me. Not because I was hiding anything, but because I wasn't coming back. 1 week later, I boarded a flight to Colorado. Fresh air, new name on the lease, a tiny cottage near the mountains. No secrets, no safes, no more pretending. Just me, Vivian Carter, widow, survivor, not the woman who was lied to, but the one who turned silence into power.